thank you guys all for coming and your interest. I wasn't going to do much of a formal speech because I thought this would be more like people will come in, they'll go out, and also one of the kind of pleasures and points of this book is it's the kind of book that I hope sparks conversation, so that I'd love to hear your dilemmas and your ideas. But I will start a little bit with some official talk, because I know one of the things, there are two questions people always ask about books. How did you get the idea, and how did you do the research? So I'm going to start by telling you how I got the idea, because the way this book came about really speaks to what this book is about. So this is actually my fourth book. So my other books had all been business from a social policy perspective, consumer pressures on business, investigations into political pressures on business, that sort of thing. So a friend of mine who shares, my same, liberal outlook, activist outlook, and knowing of my other books, she said to me, "Fran, you ought to write about Whole Foods and how wonderful it is." And I said, "Wonderful, I hate Whole Foods." And she said, "Oh, but organic food, it created the organic market, mass market." And I said, "It's horrible, it's union busting, it puts small local companies out of business, it's high priced." And so that got me thinking, here you have two people who basically agree on the same values, so violently disagreeing about this sort of one iconic, supposedly liberal business. And I got to thinking, what are some other business-related topics where two, fairly liberal people would disagree, or even one person might disagree within herself? And once you start looking for them, they just come out of the woodwork. And that's what this book came to be about, is how you juggle, how you cope with this. I'm going to give you just a few examples, and I'm hoping that as I say them, you'll go, uh-huh. Probably the most common is what I call the apple-blueberry example. In my case, it was apples. I walked into my local food co-op the very first time I went there and rejoined it. And I stood there for minutes, literally minutes. Over here, we've discussed this already, over here, organic Gala apples imported from New Zealand. Over here, minimally treated apples grown in New York State. And I live in New York, okay? And I stood there. Well, organic is definitely better for the earth, none of those pesticides, and probably better for our bodies. But imported all the way from New Zealand, the petroleum that was used to ship it, the carbon emissions. Now, I'd like to support my local New York State farmers, and again, there'd be less petroleum used, fewer emissions, but what does minimally treated mean? How bad are the, chemicals? And I just stood there. And again, I hear this from people all the time on other foods. The second example also has to do with my food co-op. Do you have a food co-op here?
Yes.
Now, right, of course. Now, our co-op is the kind where you have to work. I don't know if you have to, okay. Yeah, ours is unusual. So we each put in about 3 hours a month. My job is check out. People mop the floors, they stock the shelves, regular jobs. We have 15,000 members. It's 45,000 hours a month. If the co-op didn't exist, we'd have to shop somewhere, right? Not Whole Foods. So, we go to, I don't know what your chains are here. If you have Safeway, if you have Kroger, Wegmans, I don't know, whatever chains you have.
Hy-Vee.
Okay. Most likely, those chains are unionized because supermarkets are the last big private sector industry that is largely unionized, except for Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. Okay, so they would have to hire more people, right? Because they'd have all these 15,000 new customers coming in. Our 45,000 hours a month of work translates to 381 full-time jobs. So,
Wow.
by belonging to the co-op and creating the co-op, we have essentially killed 381 union jobs. This is not what you think of when you join a food co-op. So what do you do? Yeah, you can't win, can you? I'm going to give you one more, which is, now I'm going to cheat and read from my book. I photocopied the first, but here, you have the book. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll vouch for it. I'll read it from the first pages of the book. You'll know it's really from the book. I'm not cheating. Anyway, this is a true story, but short. I'm just going to read a few paragraphs. Okay. So, one evening in 2008, I happened to be in Boston, in a restaurant near Boston, trying to order dinner. Now, as long as I was in New England, I figured I ought to sample a local specialty. And that would also be good for the environment because trucks would not be, using gas, spewing emissions to carry the ingredients. But the menu didn't specify which foods were local. Now, the only items that I was pretty sure were from the Boston area were lobster and clams, which I can't eat because I keep semi-kosher, and haddock, which is usually caught by trawling methods that are very dangerous for the seabed and other species. Okay, so how about a non-local but sustainable type of fish? Well, in this book I mentioned tilapia. Since then, problems have come up with tilapia. In any case, that was moot because tilapia wasn't on the menu. Moreover, all the fish dishes were either baked in breadcrumbs or fried, which would be fattening. Okay, well, forget about the fish. Anyway, I really craved a salad. This would be low calorie and healthful. And another advantage in salad's favor, it cost only about 2/3 the price of the haddock. However, I wanted some protein in my salad. And since I'm not vegetarian or strictly kosher, I could have the tossed salad with grilled chicken. But since the menu didn't indicate any provenance for the chicken, nothing about organic or free range, then the chicken probably came from some industrial farm in Maryland, where it would have been pumped full of antibiotics and salt, jammed with 30,000 others into a dark, dusty shed, reeking of their own waste, crippled by inbreeding to produce breasts so unnaturally large they could barely walk, and then, of course, ferried several hundred miles to Boston. So at that point, the safest thing to eat seemed to be the chocolate cake. Absolutely true story. So, all right, so you go through these kinds of things, and at this point, if you're not laughing, you're throwing up your hands and saying, it's hopeless, I can't do anything right, might as well just eat Hostess Twinkies. And that's partly why I wrote the book, to show you don't have to eat Hostess Twinkies, to kind of, to first let you readers know, that's right, it is impossible. There's other books make it sound so easy, and it's not. And you're right to scream, and don't feel guilty, and of course to suggest, some solutions that I found. I don't want to tell you what to do, but kind of let you know you're not alone, and to give you some pathways. And then to get to the other question that people always ask, right? How did you do your research? One of the things I'm kind of proud about in my research, of course I talked to what you might call the usual suspects. Activist group like the Sierra Club and Greenpeace and PETA and the Humane Society and the New American Dream and a couple websites, Grist and World Changing, and there's a group who created a new kind of a kosher certification that includes humane treatment of animals and workers.
Oh, yeah.
You might have heard of that.
Apart from what happened here in Iowa.
Of course, you guys know all about that from agro-processors, which I talk about in the book. And I also talked to people who make some of those best places to work lists, and who else? Oh, the AFL-CIO, and and some companies like Ben and Jerry's in my food co-op, to see how they do it. But anyway, one of the things I'm proud of is I didn't just get their blather. I mean, I wanted their blather there. Why should you do this? What's wrong with this? But I also asked a lot of these people, as people, what do you do in your life?
Huh.
And yeah, see, I was proud of that. Like Carol Muffet from Greenpeace, for example, and this is in the book. He was telling me how he was like sitting there trying to have dinner. He and his wife, and he and his daughter, with his daughter's little friend and her family, and they couldn't find anything to eat because from Greenpeace they had to boycott all this fish, but the daughter's father was a union organizer, and they were boycotting, grapes and something else, and it was like they couldn't get any food, And then I talked to a guy named Stuart Acuff, who was then the main assistant to John Sweeney, who was at that point the president of the AFL-CIO, who no longer is. And Stuart Acuff was talking about buying union stuff and why aluminum, you should get your soda or beer in aluminum cans rather than bottles, because the aluminum companies are unionized, and I said, okay, does your family wear blue jeans? Yeah. Where do you get them? He actually wouldn't answer, because there are no blue jeans made in unionized factories in America. Absolutely not. Well, I should, no brands that you've ever heard of. Okay, there's a website called stillmadeinusa.com. I mean, it's exactly the way it sounds, stillmadeinusa.com. And it does list dozens and dozens of clothes made in the U.S. Some of them are they're local stores, one store in Podunk, Iowa. No, that's my usual line. But one store in Podunk, New York, whatever. One store nowhere near you.
That has a ring to it.
Yeah. Or there's this schlumpy clothes that, if you want to be hip, you'd never wear, what brands you've never heard of. There are no name, fashion, hip, cool jeans brands made in union shops in America. And Stuart Acuff absolutely wouldn't answer this, and I tried every which way, until he finally kind of said, we get jeans, and I don't feel really good about it, But anyway, so my point is, I really tried to talk to these people as human beings. How do they juggle their dilemmas? And of course, I talked to my friends, myself. And so it was a combination of real people. But that's my point, is these are choices that we as real people face in our lives, not just the slogans of all these books out there that tell you how perfect you should be. So, because I know I could come up with some suggestions of things I do, but I thought, maybe I'd start by saying, I know some of you laughed at some of my stories before. Do anybody want to bring up some of the blueberry apple dilemmas or whatever, some of the things that you sit there and just knock yourself in the head about, what am I going to do? Is anything really a real bugaboo for you guys where you just can't find a decent answer?
I like to use small garbage cans, so I like to use leftover plastic grocery bags. But I feel conflicted about it because I'm using, I know that they're not very environmentally, we can't do much with them for recycling, I don't think.
Yeah, well, when you finish, you tie up your plastic and you throw it in the garbage.
Right.
And your garbage gets collected and it goes in a landfill.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I suppose, even if you didn't use a plastic bag, and you just put it straight in your garbage pail and threw it straight in your big garbage pail, and they threw that straight in the garbage truck, it would still go to the landfill. Though admittedly you'd be saving the plastic bags, but you'd be corroding your garbage pail and you'd use up your garbage pail that much faster and have to replace it. So in the end, I'm not sure you'd be saving any resources. So I do believe there are some sort of compostable garbage bags which probably cost 10 times the cost of garbage bags. And so in your case, what you're doing is recycling.
Right.
Which is a good thing. Right, but it's better than not at all. I mean, I guess my only suggestion would be to kind of try to keep it one for one. I mean, you probably have heard, like all of us have heard, like, when you go shopping, bring your own bag, your reusable bag, right? And try not to get the plastic bags. Okay. Now, you reuse the plastic bags.
Right.
But I would just suggest you try not to let those plastic bags pile up at home. Try to keep it one for one. And then try to, to the degree you can, recycle and compost as much garbage as you can. So you have that much less. Now, composting, I don't know where you live, but it can be really hard. Maybe it's easier here in Iowa where you guys mostly have yards. I live in New York City, and that's just a really hard thing for most people to do. So I would, those are some ways you might feel a little better. But it sounds to me like you're making a really good effort to do your share in recycling. But yeah, that's absolutely your dilemma. I mean, exactly. Plastic, and you're trying to use it. Yeah. No, that's a dilemma. Actually, I've heard before from people too, with the whole idea of the plastic bags and the garbage bags. Yeah, it's a common one.
Our recycling operation is just down the street from there, and they have a space to put grocery bags, plastic grocery
Oh.
bags. Where they recycle them and they take them and melt them down and make more plastic.
Clean plastic bags, not the ones she put her garbage in, you mean?
No.
Yeah.
Well, she may have cleaned her garbage.
That's right. She
Yeah.
scrubs her garbage.
Well, now see,
you know.
in New York, and I don't know if it's a law here, any store that gives away those plastic bags, you know, with the handles and all, must accept them back for recycling. So it's probably not the law here. Now, whether there's a limit on how dirty they can be, I don't know, because I don't use them. I virtually try never to use them. You know, so. Now, also, by the way, there's a supermarket chain in the Northeast called Pathmark. Now, what they do is they actually, if you bring your own bags, they give you a 2-cent credit for each bag you bring, which isn't bad. I mean, you know, not much, but. So those are some other ones. So in your case, you do it at the landfill. So you have to make the trip to bring your plastic bags to the landfill. That's a hassle.
In our case, we collect them for quite a while and then turn them over to a man who donates, who volunteers at our local crisis center. He uses them down there to pack food in to distribute food for people who need food.
Oh, so you don't bring them to the landfill, you bring them to him.
Yeah.
So you're recycling them, just like you are. Yeah, and hopefully, well, now it's interesting. So then the people take the plastic bags from him, and he doesn't know what happens to them next. Right, the people just take the food in the bags.
Yeah, they do. So,
I mean, I don't know, and the people taking the food have enough problems. I don't know if it's possible to kind of suggest to them, try to keep reusing these bags. They haven't, I mean, they have, if they're taking donated food, they got enough on their minds. So we can't all be perfect and virtuous, and that's probably a step too far. But each person in the individual, some of them might be open to that message, some might not.
They're probably already reusing the bags many times.
imagine
Yeah,
they
I
are,
hope,
yeah.
you know. You just don't know.
Better than buying saran wrap.
Yeah, yeah, which is expensive. I'll tell you guys this, oh wait, someone had their hand up, then I'll tell you guys a story. No?
It wasn't me.
Okay, so I'll tell you guys a story. So I gave a speech at Skidmore College last fall on this book. Actually, it was a class, 3 or 4 classes invited me to kind of do, it was like extra credit or go to my speech. And so that was an evening. The next morning, I'm kind of walking through, you know, downtown Saratoga, where Skidmore is. And I stop at a store to get my, if you've read my book, you know that one of my sins is I drink diet soda, that being my favorite. Diet AW. Anyway, so I guess we're sinning equally. Anyway, so I'm getting the soda. So ahead of me in line is a young woman, and she's buying a couple of candy bars. And the clerk gives her a bag. Now, when this happens, I have to cram my hand over my mouth, not to say, "Do you really need that plastic bag?" I feel that's rude. I don't do it. I'm gritting inside. Because she has a big pocketbook. All right. So she takes it, and I guess she's still fumbling with her change. So I go to the clerk, and whenever I go to a store, the first word out of my mouth is hello, and the second word out of my mouth is, I don't need a bag. Okay? And so as the clerk is ringing, I was getting my soda. So as the clerk is ringing me up, this young woman ahead of me, she says, "Oh, you were the speaker last night. You know, I was there." And well, thank you for remembering, and thank you for coming to the speech. And then I said, since you were there, let me ask you, do you really need that plastic bag? Because I felt, then I had the opening, and she says, "No, I don't." And of course I'm thinking, you didn't get anything out of my talk, did you?
Right.
So anyway, that was a little more pushy than I usually am, but when I was talking to you about the opening and whether you could say something to somebody, everything is a little bit ad hoc and depends on the person. But see, that's another example. Yeah, Gordon, you were talking about being an activist and community organizing. So here you are. You see something like this day after day. I see it every day at the store, the person ahead of me getting bags. And do you speak out? Should I speak out? I'm not going to ask you whether if you speak out, you can, or don't, you can tell me if you do, but do you think I should? Should I be more forward in speaking out at times like that? What if you were the person ahead of me? Would you be really pissed at me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Tackle them.
Yeah.
I think by
I'd
you
be
saying,
offended.
"I don't need a bag," other people hear that, and when they hear it enough, then we'll remember to say that. I almost asked you for a bag here today, and then I realized, oh my gosh, the car's so close, I can just put it in the car.
I wouldn't have had a bag
I know
anyway.
it, now I realize that. So it's just, I think, the habit. So hearing you say it would be helpful.
But I should say it loudly then. That I should be obnoxious. Hi, come sit down. I should be sort of obnoxious and say loudly so that everyone in line can hear me. That's a thought.
That or
Please go ahead and
Oh.
sit down.
the other thing,
Okay, yeah.
the other approach would be to talk with cashiers and encourage them to ask people, do you really need a bag? Because it's a different kind of exchange there. They're in a place where it might not sound as judgmental and, just as an exercise in mindfulness.
Yeah, that's good. Very rarely, but there have been occasions when I felt the clerk is open to it. Like, if I say, I don't need a bag, and the clerk responds in some way like, oh, that's great. If I feel there's an opening, I will say to the clerk, hey, I'm glad you feel that way. Listen, maybe instead of just giving people bags, you could wait till they ask. Now, some clerks, of course, the store they work for just kind of absolutely requires, especially the big chains or whatever, they just must put things in bags. But so you and I are kind of on the same wavelength. The way to do it is to work through the clerk, maybe, not the
It's
other
just
customers.
another way to do it.
Yeah, but it might be a better way, because, yeah.
Or talk to the managers. Just
Yeah.
make it a store policy to ask.
You're right, that's even better.
That would make, and then you can say paper, plastic, or green.
And give
Or
people a
none.
choice.
Paper, plastic, or none, because green is a little, or paper, plastic, or did you bring your own?
Right.
Or something, yeah, green is a little weird. But you're right. So, did you bring your own, or do you need a bag? You could
Right.
do it that way. Or just do you need a bag? Because I thought, I didn't bring my own, so I guess I need one. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just can carry it in your hands, yeah. But yeah. You kind of walked in, but we were just sort of talking about some of the common dilemmas that we all face when we're trying to, like in daily life, juggle, ethics or values that are important to us that are in conflict. I mean, in this case, it was just sort of getting along with your fellow human beings versus saving the environment by, saying nasty things to people who get plastic bags at the checkout. But we were talking also about like local fruit versus imported organic fruit.
Right.
See, that's the most common one. I bet you've run into that. Yeah. What do you tend to do, if I can put you on the spot, when you get like local unorganic versus imported organic? Is that a tough one for you?
Well, when it's possible to get the local, I way prefer to do that.
Yeah.
And we are in Macomb, Illinois, and we're in the process of working to do a co-op. It's about maybe halfway through the process, which will strongly encourage that and, to buy as locally as possible. So some things are available in our area and some you have to go, a few towns away, but, as locally as possible.
Oh, that's great. So you're trying to set up a co-op. Wow, that's a lot of
Well-
work. Oh, or they are.
The
So-
Yeah.
community.
The community, right, I'm just
Yeah.
a small part of it, but, yeah.
That is a lot of work, setting up a co-op. I mean, what do you have to do it? Do you know?
Well,
Patience.
it's about a 3-year process, and when we came in on it, it was like not quite to the halfway point. And so there's just a lot of background work that needs to be done, and forms to fill out, and you have to. Some of the people went and visited several other co-ops, and they are different ways of organizing it, and so. But we've only lived there a couple of years, and there's been, ever since we've been there, several people who are really committed to buying local and to getting as much local produce as possible and organic and so forth. So we're just, a small part, but, not one of the movers and shakers, so I don't know a lot of the details.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, this sort of local unorganic versus imported organic is actually one of the ones that's a little easier to solve. very often your local farmer is, that close to organic. And the reason this person is not certified organic is actually very expensive and difficult to be certified organic. Well, you guys know your farm country. To get the USDA certification, you basically have to leave your land fallow for it's either 2 or 3 years, because you've got to have 2 or 3 years where you're not using pesticides, but you cannot sell it as organic because there may still be some residue. So you could either sell it as chemically treated, but it's not, which you sell for less. Therefore, you're using it's as expensive as growing it organic, but you have to sell it at the cheaper price, or just let it go fallow. And then, so a lot of the farmers just can't afford that. Plus, there's paperwork and bureaucracy and inspections and all. So they don't, but they actually come very close to being organic. Very minimal use of, or no use of chemical pesticides and things like that. So sometimes at your farmer's market, your CSA, whatever, or here you don't need a CSA, I guess you go next door to the farm, whatever. You can talk to the farmer, see what methods this person used, and you may feel pretty good. And so you're still getting the value of the local. I mean, here you can probably get so much locally grown. I mean, I know New Yorkers think only about corn, but yeah. What else grows locally here?
Every vegetable you can think
And different times of the
of.
year.
And fruits.
Yeah. So you guys are really lucky in that. And how your farms are pretty close to Iowa City. I mean, just go a few miles, right? You've
Yeah.
got.
Could walk to one from here.
Uh-huh.
And there's
Just
CSAs
outside of
too.
town.
Yeah.
And then also the Amish farm nearby, and they sell a lot of beef, milk, eggs, and all of it free range and
Yeah.
such. So a little more expensive, but all good and
Yeah.
abundant.
So you have a lot of good choices. You're very
Yeah.
lucky in that.
Yeah, I think we're.
And you said the word abundant. There's also a movement locally started by Dr. Terry Walls about growing your own healthy food in your yard, in your windowsill. And she has worked with people to come up with growing your own things in as small of a space as you have, so that you're eating better.
Yeah, again, you're lucky because you probably have yards, So then, although, see, here's the thing. I don't know, I'm not really the kind who's into gardening, and I have what I call a brown thumb, kind of, when I planted it dies. So, I had to sort of get over my kind of guilt feelings that, I should be growing my own, Well, okay, I don't. I'm not good at that. So, that's just not what I do. We can't all be good at all of it.
Right.
But that's certainly, if you like doing it and you have the space and the time, right? That's the thing, is where do you choose to spend your time? So, I mean, some of these books kill me. It's like, I don't know, they expect you to have time. I mean, I don't know how many of you people have kids, but if you can remember back to when your kids were little, how were you supposed to have the time to make make your own baby food, and I don't know, cloth diapers that I don't, even if you use the diaper service, whatever, you still have to half wash them by hand. I tried cloth diapers for about 3 months, I mean, and you're not supposed to use a clothes dryer. Oh, that's the other one that gets me. Clothes dryers are bad for the environment. So you're supposed to have the cloth diapers that you hang up on the line. Well, I don't know if you've tried hanging things on the line, but they come out really rough, and so you put this rough cloth diaper on your baby, forget it, Let's be practical, folks. And I'm sorry, I would rather spend the quality time with my kid rather than with my kid's diapers. So, my kids had disposable diapers. And I tried the cloth. So we're just kind of talking about some of the dilemmas that arise when you're trying, you've got values, too many values that you're trying to live by, and they're often in conflict. And I guess if I even had one main kind of lesson I wanted to take away from the book in a way, it would be don't feel guilty. I mean, okay, if you're doing one little thing if you're buying cage-free eggs instead of, factory farmed eggs, if you're buying recycled paper every other time instead of, virgin paper, anything you do, after all, it helps, right? You're saving a couple trees a year. You're making some hens' lives better. Whatever little thing you do helps. And of course, I suppose the other side is to feel smug or something. Well, I bought one ream of recycled paper. I mean, I'm not advocating smugness, but I just think that, there's this sort of, activist guilt. I mean, the people who are the super, activists making people who aren't perfect, feel bad. And I just think whatever you can do, and the other thing is to sort of have a sense of humor. Like we've been evidencing plenty of that sense of humor. You just have to. It's the only way you're going to get through some of this. There's also, a story I like to tell that, Tom, you're going to hear some of this tomorrow. I'm sorry. I'm also giving this sermon tomorrow at the Unitarian Church, so some of this I'm going to repeat. But I call this the Great Toilet Paper Battle. So, in my household, I try to do certain things. Some of it predate the book. Some of it, my book kind of raised my own consciousness. It's all vicious or virtuous circle. I wrote the book because I try to live a certain way, and then in the process, I learned more. All right, so, for example, I have not used paper napkins in about 15 years. I use cloth napkins. I mean, I don't even got to the point it's just second nature. How nice not to bring home that big, huge package of paper napkins. I try not to use paper towels at all. I try to use rags and sponges, but when I do, I buy recycled paper towels. I try to use earth-friendly detergent. Okay. I started buying recycled toilet paper. So my family didn't care about the napkins. My son has never known anything but cloth napkins. They didn't even notice what detergent I used. They didn't care about the paper towels. But when I started switching to the recycled toilet paper, I started getting little muttered comments on the order of Russian military surplus toilet paper. Yeah. Those of you who've used it know this is true. So you know what? There's also a value called caring about the feelings of the people you care about, the people in your household, right? There's a Hebrew phrase, shalom bayit. It means peace in the household. Okay. So, okay. We now kill trees. I buy, your soft virgin toilet paper. My family loves me. You just, you juggle. You choose your values.
Don't they make a softer recycled toilet paper?
I tried several, okay? And the one I ended up with was the one that seemed the softest. Now, okay, do you know of a softer one I should use? Maybe this is
Green
better.
Forest.
I think I tried, because our co-op has Marcal and Green Forest, and I tried them both, and Marcal seemed softer, but you're happy with Green Forest, huh? You have a more flexible family household. I don't know.
There was a legend going around in the late 1920s that that's how Lindbergh knew that he was over Scotland. Saw the toilet paper hanging on the line dry.
But maybe I'll try Green Forest.
It might be forest green.
I know the one you mean.
I get it by the case, so.
But
Anyway.
I know the one you mean, because we do have it at my co-op. And maybe I'll try it, sneak it in, see what kind of,
CVS has a good brand, it's their green brand, and you get a lot more for money. They last longer, and they actually are quite good. Another problem is you have to go to CVS pharmacy, which is like an evil chain, but.
See, that's exactly, sit down, please. That's exactly the kind of dilemma. Well, I could get recycled toilet paper that my family accept, but I have to buy it at the evil chain. Exactly. Now, CVS is maybe less evil than other chains. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Walmart, but.
Probably anything like Osco, Eckert, whatever, Albertsons, it's the same thing, so
Yeah.
they just put their stamp on it. But
figure you're not giving them that much money.
Yeah, no, it's exactly, it's a perfect
Yeah.
kind of point. And so there is no easy answer. There's no perfect answer. And it just comes to juggling your values. You know, you do a little bit here and a little bit there. And so you go, okay, I'll get, maybe, this is one thing. I'll get it at CVS, but it is the only thing I will get there. I will walk in. I will not be tempted by their sales. I will get that and I will walk out. And furthermore, if possible, I will walk there. You know, that's the other, because in New York, it's easy for me to say I'll walk. So maybe that, I mean, thank you for bringing that up. That's just a perfect example. So you do buy it there. You feel that that's,
I do,
Your
well, it's the
chocolate.
only drugstore, oh, I think there are 2 drugstores within, I have to walk, so there's no, I don't think there's any, some of the stuff I can't get at the co-op, so I'm just gonna say, I have to get CVS, so I get that and contact lenses and stuff
yeah.
there, so yeah, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, that's perfect, you know.
My dilemma is basically with things that are not properly recyclable, such as the compact fluorescents. You know, there's no way, these are things that are going to go to the landfill and are going to cause poisons to go into the soil. Alkaline batteries. There are other problems, like white paper is not recycled around here. It is at the hospital, it's recycled, but there's no place you can take business paper, which is recycled into insulation, but what you want is white paper that will become white paper again. There's no real way to do that around here that I know of. So my dilemma is with things that are not recyclable that should be.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a lot of dilemmas. You know, it's interesting how the paper, now in New York, they just pick up, they don't tell us to separate the paper. I mean, all the paper I recycle, like, you know, I'm a writer, I use a lot of paper, right? You know, printer paper, I try not to print things out, but I do. So all of that gets in the pile with the newspapers and the letters and everything. And, you know, so maybe in New York, as far as I know, they do whatever they do, mush it down right with water and squish it and recycle it all. So I guess it's different here. So I don't, you know, that's a toughie. Oh, now the CFL bulbs. I believe Home Depot takes them. Okay, see, that's a big evil chain, but you don't have to buy anything there. Just go there and bring them the bulbs. And I believe some True Value hardware chains do, but I'm not totally sure about that. So they do take them, and I don't know quite how they recycle them because they have mercury in them. So carefully. So if there's a Home Depot around here, you might check. There is? Or you know other
Yeah,
places?
there's a Home Depot around
Do
here.
they take compact?
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah. You might check.
The True Value took the bulbs a year ago. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were taking them a year ago.
The Ace Hardware, you know, I don't know of True Value hardware around here anymore. They're Ace Hardware. Let it conceal it, 'cause Ace.
I think it was Ace. It was Lennox.
I'll
the
check
Lennox
with
on
them.
top.
Okay,
A year ago, the one on Mall Drive was
I'll check with them.
Also, do you have any environmental, ecological recycling groups, you know, community groups, activist groups? Ask them because they may know.
Well, there are tons of them, but I wanted to mention something else. The city does do that. You can take them out to the landfill, and of course, they have curbside recycling, but not for buildings with more than 4 units, so, which is stupid.
It should be the other way. It's so
Well, they've
weird.
got these great sounding, and this is where I think, yeah, we've got a lot of groups, and I think they need to get in here and put pressure on the city. It's hard to recycle. I have to either drive somewhere, sort out my recycling, so I've got like a year's worth of cardboard and crap, you know, and I'm going to threaten, and if I do, I'll write a letter to the city, so I just toss this in the landfill, and here's why. Or you go way out to the edge of town, and then you can recycle the stuff, but then they make a big deal about doing this, or you have one day where you can take, you know, but it's not enough. It's a half measure, and they think that they're doing a great job, but it's not. And I think people need to make a little bit of a campaign to push the city council to live up to their ideal. So, you know, let's make recycling possible and easy. You know, and let's make getting rid of hazardous waste easy. You know, have pickup days and stuff like that. I don't think it would hurt at all.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
a lot
you know.
of lip
that-
service.
obviously it takes some effort on the activist part of people like you to do it. And the last thing I want to do is sit here and tell you guys what you should be doing with your quote spare time. You know, so I really don't want to push it, and even ask you to call Home Depot. I'm sort of putting a demand on you, but less of a demand than asking you to organize recycling. You know. Then the other thing is, you know, they are slowly coming out with other kinds of energy efficient lights, like LED lights and whatnot. I don't know if they're any more recyclable, but they don't have mercury. So maybe your dilemma might be solved in a couple of years too. So that might help, or might make it easier. You know. But yeah, I mean, you're trying to do the right thing. Use these more energy efficient bulbs, and then you can't recycle them. It's you know, again, another one of those dilemmas.
Is it true they eventually want to do away with the incandescent
Oh,
bulbs?
it is the law right now that as of next year, the stores are not supposed to be able to sell incandescent. Now, there is a movement afoot in the House. The House of Representatives passed a law to repeal that bill. That will, of course, go nowhere in the Senate, but so the law will stay in effect, you know, unless something changes. But yeah, so which is one reason, you know, free market at work. Oh, we will no longer be able to have incandescents. There are problems with CFLs, so that now that's why companies are trying to come up with other energy efficient bulbs. I should have qualified what I said to you before. The law says that as of 2012, bulbs must have a certain level of energy efficiency, which de facto means an incandescents won't qualify. It's not that the law doesn't say incandescents are illegal. The law says you must have a certain level of energy efficiency. And so, this is how you get people to be more energy efficient. When you do that kind of thing, it spurs the creativity, you know, of business to come up with something with more alternatives, cheaper, more recyclable alternatives. I mean, it's just a good thing, you know, where
The LEDs are
business
good.
can be a good player, you know.
I think the LEDs are good, but they're very pricey.
Exactly. You know, and Philips, for example, is working on a new kind of bulb that's supposed to be somewhere in between LED and CFL, and energy efficient and less pricey, you know. And this is where you can harness, you know, business in a good way to help society. I mean, that's one of the things is, you know, as environmental activists or consumer activists or whatever, the best way of success is not to fight business. It's to find ways to work with business, but not obviously to be co-opted by business. You know, that's the risk. Working with can be a euphemism for being co-opted, or it can really mean exactly what it says, work with, as equals. You know, depends how you want to use it. If you find that the conditions are becoming too onerous on one side, you drop out. But, you know, try. I mean, that's kind of what my books have been about too. How to turn business into being a more consumer-friendly business. I guess it's as good a time as any to just sort of, because they kind of are all over there, those people. But to mention that I did write that book that's there, and if you want to buy it, why, I'd be delighted to sell it and sign it. Okay, so that was a commercial interruption for Doug here. You can edit out. I do hope you're going to edit some of this.
Oh no.
Can we go back to something you said at the very beginning that really intrigued me about your co-op and how you started realizing that by having people be part of this co-op, it might have actually cost some union jobs, which is not anything that I really considered. But if we take that logic a little farther, then it sounds like it's fine not to have a co-op. But that doesn't seem like an answer either.
That is exactly my point about the conflict of the values you care about. You know, their co-op epitomizes many good values in my mind. First of all, the word co-op, the idea of people creating a community, working together. They make an effort to get, well, they won't buy anything that comes more than 200 miles away, with a couple of exceptions like coffee and bananas. You know, they have very strict standards for minimal packaging. It's not organic, but there's very strict standards on the amount of pesticides. Certain companies they will absolutely not buy from. You know, really good standards. So I feel like they save me the trouble of doing the research, and I can trust with their low prices because we do the work. You know, a lot of good values there. The bad value is that inevitably it destroys some union jobs. Probably not the 1-for-1, the 381, because some of the work hours we do are things that a normal store doesn't provide. For example, childcare. There are hours that are spent in sort of community service. You can work with a soup kitchen, you know. But be that as it may, I think it's pretty clear that the co-op takes business away from the supermarkets. That's definite. I mean, we'd have to shop somewhere else. We couldn't get it all at farmers markets. You know, the co-op sells toothpaste. I mean, things that and we'd have to get it, whether it's CVS or Kroger's or whatever. We'd have to get it at a store. And you know, again, there's some of it you might get at your natural food store, your little tiny local store, but inevitably, many of us would go to the big chains. And those big chains are union. And therefore those big chains would hire more people because they'd have more customers. It's simple logic. It's the way the world works.
But also because you have the co-op there, you may be influencing the big chains in a good way, because they're realizing that people value other things too. And, you know, so if there's no competition, then that local chain might charge more for everybody. So
Interesting thought. Does the co-op present competition to the food chains? Well, one thing is, and I don't have you noticed in the stores here in the last 5 years, whatever period, you're finding more and more organic food. A lot of it is big organic, factory farmed organic in essence. Earthbound, you know, carrots and Horizon milk, right, or whatever, the big organic chains. Some of it may be local organic brands or small organic brands or house organic brands. I don't know what you have here. Now, what is causing that? Clearly, there's some form of consumer demand and market pressure. To be honest, it's not from my food co-op. It's much bigger than that. And I don't even know if it's from food co-ops in general. It's from Whole Foods. I give Whole Foods credit. It's absolutely true that Whole Foods created the mass market in organic and healthful food. I mean, absolutely true. Doesn't mean I'm going to shop there, but yeah, I'll give them credit. So it did come from that, growing consumer awareness, the growth of CSAs, the growth of farmers markets probably was the biggest. They're much bigger than CSAs. All of these things together have created the pressure that now ordinary chain supermarkets and local stores have more and more organic food. If my food co-op disappeared, the local stores would still carry organic food. Maybe more of it, but you know, would their prices be higher without the co-op? Not sure, you know. I mean, that's the concept of the free market, more competition. Does the co-op really compete with the chains? You know, it's not something I asked the head of the co-op. It's a good question. I mean, some of the things that the chains and the co-op carry are so different, obviously, but there's plenty of overlap. Because also, of course, we have several local supermarket chains who are competing with each other,
right,
and forcing their prices down. So I don't know. So, I mean, what you're saying is, I mean, again, you're raising good questions about the juggling and conflicting values. Well, you know, you get this, and then you lose this, and I still belong to my food co-op. I have made the decision that the good things it does outweigh the destruction of union jobs. And the one sort of trap I'm not going to fall into is saying, well, I'm only one member, and whether or not I joined, it wouldn't affect the union jobs. I think that's a false kind of comfort. I'm sorry about that. But, if, you know, it's the kind of thing, because if you really, you know, if you feel strongly about a value, you can talk to your other co-op members. You know, you have to consider yourself as the harbinger of many or whatever. You can't just say, oh, well, my one thing doesn't make a difference, because then that goes back to the other side of it. You might say, why bother buying cage-free eggs? My dozen eggs doesn't make a difference, but it does. You know, in that case, a difference for the good. You have to say, you've improved the lives of a few hens. Maybe it doesn't seem like much, but it's something. You know, or a more concrete example, when you buy your recycled toilet paper, you have saved a couple of trees. That's a good thing, even if it's only a couple per year. So don't discount what you do as an individual. Sure, you can have much more impact to go out and organize a recycling center or build a co-op as those people are doing, in their town, or, carry a petition, or whatever. I mean, here in Iowa, of course, you guys are particularly lucky. You're a swing state. You can have tremendous influence on the political system, on presidential elections. So you can really play a role, which, we in New York, everyone writes us off. But so I go and campaign in Pennsylvania, states where I can have more of an impact. And in fact, I'll tell you. Okay, talk about one person's impact. Last summer and fall, I was one of a number of people from New York City. We went out to Long Island to campaign because, our local Congress people were kind of pretty assured of the election. So we went out to Long Island to campaign for a member of Congress named Tim Bishop, who I consider a really good guy. I've met him. He's been in Congress, I think, 4 or 5 terms. Democrat, was being targeted, as a vulnerable Democrat. This is a district with, I think, majority Republicans. And really being, the Republican guy was a carpetbagger who didn't even live there, he just moved in, who'd made his money outsourcing, right? So anyway, so a bunch of us went out, when we could. I think I made 5 trips out there to his district, going, ringing doorbells, making phone calls, and generally we took the Long Island Railroad. There was one weekend when the Long Island Railroad was down for maintenance, so I drove. I brought 4 other people in my car. Now I'm telling this for a reason. So between the 4 people I brought, plus myself and those trips, maybe together we rang 250 doorbells, let's say. Tim Bishop was reelected by less than 300 votes. I feel like I personally reelected that guy, So talk about the difference one person can make. And I feel really good about it, which is obviously why I'm telling the story. I'm trying to avoid partisan politics in this talk, but I'm a pretty clear book called The Overloaded Liberal. I'm not going to surprise too many people that I campaigned for a Democratic congressman. Anyway, I don't know, if there's, by the way, just another little commercial interruption. There's also flyers, and please feel free to take the flyers. Those are free, just again about the book or, questions.
What's your next book?
Oh, thank you for bringing it up because you guys can really help me. My next book, which will be coming out exactly a year from now, July 10th, 2012, by the same publisher, Beacon. It is about 6 companies that have a reputation for being both hip and socially responsible. And I've kind of investigated them to see whether they deserve the reputation. And we are struggling now with the title. In fact, that's where I said you guys can help inspire the title. The subtitle that we all love is The Companies That Want Our Love. And we've been mulling with a title that is, the title would be Hip, Green, and blank adjective. Like hip, green, and humane, hip, green, and fair. So I'll put you on the spot. I don't know, if you come up either with an adjective or another title, if this inspires you. I told my editor that I was going to be bringing this up this weekend, and she goes, sure, absolutely. And if people phone in to your station, and you can email me with any great ideas. I think we have another week or so. I don't know when the quote final deadline is, but I'm totally open to inspiration. But I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to. But anyway, that's the next one. So as I said,
What's the subtitle?
The Companies That Want Our Love. So the idea again is, this isn't just another way as I'm trying to look at business and social responsibility. Companies that have a reputation for being, really good, socially responsible, treat their workers well, environmental, whatever, and cool, because, companies that, you know, we feel fashionable buying from or whatever. And whether they deserve that reputations, I don't know. If you think of something, let me know. I don't know if anybody else has any particular.
I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
co-ops and creating markets or demand outlets, or becoming an outlet for farms that practice good and humane animal care, things like that. To what extent, I mean, in your looking at this, have they, you know, like Ben and Jerry's did for dairy products in Vermont, I mean, to what extent are the co-ops locally creating that kind of demand for humane products?
Well, I think to a small degree only, for the reason that they're just small. Oh gosh, in my book, I should remember this, a statistic on how many co-ops are across the country, and it was actually sadly small, I don't know, 200 or something, you know. And some of them are very tiny. The co-op I belong to is the largest in the country, with the 15,000 members. Like, you said there are several co-ops here, do you know how big some of them are?
And they, you know, there's no inclusion.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, some of them are very, very small. So,
But anyway,
you know, obviously looped together, they're going to create some demand. They're not all organic. First, you know, co-op by definition does not have to be organic or health food in any way. You could presumably have a co-op that sold Hostess Twinkies. You know, I keep harping on Hostess Twinkies. The point of a co-op is it's simply a group of people who make the management decisions, who generally elect a board that make the management decisions. It does not have to be where you work, because most co-ops are not like mine, you don't work. It just really has to do with the way it's run. So I think in general they do tend to be sort of helpful. So Ben and Jerry's has a much bigger impact. It's huge, you know. Which is why by the way the Humane Society really got on their case, because they were using factory farmed eggs instead of cage-free eggs. And the Humane Society pushed and pushed and pushed them. The same thing, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's can have huge impact. You know, and that's why some of these groups, you know, Greenpeace for years was fighting Trader Joe's over the fish. They were selling various endangered species of fish, you know, that were on the Monterey Bay Aquarium's list of endangered species and whatnot. So that's, you know, so the activist groups are going to focus where they can have the most impact.
which is always.
You know, understandably.
I didn't realize that co-ops were that small in
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
You ready, Kate?
Sadly, yeah. You know. But you know, every little bit helps. I do keep coming back to that. You know, I would still say if you feel so inclined, you know, join your co-op. I mean, depends on what your local co-op is like and what you get out of it. Since you don't have to work at yours, you don't need to have that time, so that's a good start. I don't know if it has low prices. I don't know if it has healthier food. You know, I don't know what the reason for joining the co-op might be. You know, creating a community. Sometimes co-ops are just kind of good because they create, you know, places. They have speakers and they're places you can come and have community events or create a. I mean, one reason I like my co-op, I always see somebody I know when I go there, and I just don't have that experience at the local supermarket, you know, or whatever. So it's just really a cool feeling, you know, when I'm doing my work shift, checking people out. In fact, that's how I did some of the research for my new book. People were checking out and they were buying products from one of the companies in my book, and I would say, why do you buy this product? And I got to interview them, so that was really useful too. Kind of trying to scribble down notes while checking people out.
I'd like to see more like community gardens.
Yeah, do you have them here?
Not that I know of. Or, do you know, are there community gardens here? Yeah.
There is
Several. Yeah, there were places around town.
oh,
Next to schools or in parks or outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that maybe so many people have backyards and they have their own gardens and they may feel less of a need. But you're right, because it's not just for growing the food, it's the sense of
Right.
community that you're talking about. And plus you're probably sharing tools, which saves on people buying tools. I know there are some in Long Island, for example. I did an article about
But why
community
have a
gardens.
huge lawn when you could put in more gardens?
It's work, though, you know?
Yeah.
It is a lot of work.
South America.
So,
Somebody's planted a tomato plant in the little flower bed in front of where I live right on Clinton Street, which is the city approved flowers and so on, but there's some guerrilla gardener going out there at night.
But the city isn't tearing it down.
No.
Okay, that's
no.
good.
We actually, there was one controversy involving the original Wild Bill's coffee shop several years ago. You know that patch that's up in front?
Yeah.
Where they're really large trees now, but they were quite small at that time. And they had used it to store construction materials for 2 years. And so all the grass was dead and there were just these small trees. And so someone from Art and Education down below took it upon herself to plant a garden. And we were the ones blamed for it because they came and ran their hose out of the coffee house through the window. And so I got this stern letter from the lawn and garden people saying it was, whatever it is, grounds, plants and grounds, saying this is unauthorized garden and must be removed at once. And so naturally a call to the paper caused a great amount of interest in this garden. And so the head groundskeeper said, okay, you can keep it for the rest of the season. And the reporter who came was really disappointed. He said, oh, I was so disappointed. I wanted to see you on the end of a grader or a backhoe, trying to keep them from pushing down the hill. But then the next year, they said, okay, no planting or anything, but enough of the stuff was there that the garden came up by itself without anybody doing anything. But it was wonderful plants and vegetables and herbs and flowers.
So did
that
the
she
city
did.
allow that second-year garden to continue?
No, that was the university, and
Oh,
they
the
tore it
university.
out. They tore it out and planted lawn, so which is still there. But it was, I really would have liked to have been more involved as a sort of, what would you say, a guerrilla gardener. But we had nothing really to do with it. But
Have, 2 minutes.
3
in
minutes.
front of Norfolk,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, what, be interesting to see if you guys, some solutions you've come up with that you're really proud of for some of your hardest dilemmas. Anything jump out at you? No. That can help
Well,
us
one
get
of the
some
most
advice?
comprehensive recycling bottle recycling laws in the country is Iowa's.
Oh, yeah?
Although efforts to strengthen it to include like water bottles, just bottled water, which weren't around at the time the law was passed. Then the response is, well, maybe we should just do away with the law altogether, because the various corporate interests that are involved want to. So nothing has come of any of that effort, but it's eliminated about 97% of the can and bottle litter on the roadsides.
Well, now Tom, you were mentioning me the Blue Bunny ice cream dilemma. You didn't bring that one up.
No, and I'm to help this customer, but I'll be back.
Oh, all right. So,
After these messages, he'll
Yeah.
be right back.
Continue.
yeah.
I thought you might want to wrap up for the,
Okay,
for
oh,
the
sure.
TV thing.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's been really fascinating hearing everyone's stories, and you're inspiring. I guess I got to check out that Green Forest toilet paper. But I mean, what I think we're all hearing over and over is that we're all really trying to do the right thing, trying to do our part to make the world a better place, right? Whether it's, well, we haven't talked much about treatment of workers, but humane treatment of animals, recycling, avoiding carbon emissions, and I suppose the good news is that there are so many ways to do it. That creates overwhelming conflict sometimes. Which one do I do? But I would much rather have that dilemma of too many choices, right, than no choices, too few choices. So this wonderful chance, pick and choose the ones that you enjoy doing, that are easiest to do, that are most cost effective, and cost doesn't mean money, obviously cost effective in time or money or whatever. But you have so many wonderful choices, and I'm just really glad to see so many people who want to make these choices. So, thank you guys all.
Thank you.